25 modern-era players were named as semi-finalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Class of 2025. Between 4 and 8 will be selected from the list. Now, you have Eli Manning's there, Luke Kuechly's there. Like, you have some new additions on here. Adam Vinatieri, Jared Allen, Terrell Suggs, Earl Thomas, Steve Smith. You know, there's a really, really good list. And when you look at these lists, you're like, well, he's a Hall of Famer, and he's a Hall of Famer. That's true. Everybody on the list is probably a Hall of Famer, but who is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer? That's where it gets a little trickier. And let me start with Eli Manning, because I don't think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's going to get into the Hall of Fame. And now, once again, we love Eli. He's been on the show. My job is not to like you. My job is to cover you. Eli Manning had 2 great years. He didn't win any other playoff games, but in those 2 years, he won Super Bowls. He beat the Patriots, including the undefeated Patriots. That's a great postseason, having that on your resume. But his numbers, they're okay during the regular season. And the only category he led the league in 3 times, interceptions. You have the Manning name. Peyton was the first ballot Hall of Fame. There have been 16 quarterbacks, first ballot Hall of Famers. Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, Troy Aikman, Warren Moon, Steve Young, Dan Marino, John Elway, Jim Kelly, Dan Fouts, Terry Bradshaw, Roger Staubach, George Blanda, who was also a kicker, Johnny Unitas, Bart Starr, and Bobby Lane. Eli is not in that category. He's not. He's not. He can be a Hall of Fame. Once again, this goes back to what Dion talked about, and that is you can have the penthouse, you can have the second floor, first floor. I don't want to have a basement in the Hall of Fame, but if you have first floor, second floor, third floor, penthouse, or however you want to do it, or you want to give first ballot Hall of Famers a different shade of jacket, gold, I'm fine with that because they are different. First ballot Hall of Famers. But I think there have been 92 total first ballot Hall of Famers, including 16 quarterbacks. Yes, Eaton.
I feel like the first floor of the Hall of Fame should be the most valuable one.
Oh.
Even though it's the lowest,
okay.
It's the one that you walk into. So, like, if you're walking into the Hall of Fame and you're on the first floor and you're like, dang, these dudes are Hall of Famers? Really? Oh, okay. Well, I bet you we better climb all the way to the top to see the really good guys.
Well, that's why you have the penthouse and it costs more. You got to work a little bit to get up there, but when you get up there, you love the view. Yes, yeah, Paulie.
Yeah, going back to Eli Manning, like you said, when you mention those names, you throw out those names, he doesn't fit with those names. In the regular season, he's 117 and 117 as a starter, 500. Yeah. He was a 60% passer for his career. Tons of yards, 57,000 yards. 366 touchdowns, but 244 interceptions. He made 4 Pro Bowls, 2 of them as an alternate, was never an All-Pro or second-team All-Pro.
Yeah, and once again, we bring this up, and no, is he an elite quarterback? No. Did he have 2 years, 2 postseasons where he was elite? Absolutely. And he made big plays. Absolutely. But if you're going to be honest about the Hall of Fame, he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Peyton certainly was. The other names that I mentioned. Now, you might look at Bart Starr's numbers and go, really? Well, what he did for that team, the Green Bay Packers, they ran the ball, they played great defense, and then he had good postseasons, certainly against Kansas City. The big bad Chiefs, they were thinking they were going to take down the Green Bay Packers in the first Super Bowl. Then they faced the Raiders, second Super Bowl. He's in. But the numbers, like Dan Fouts to me is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Loved the offense. Loved what Air Coryell did. Dan didn't do anything in the postseason. He had his moment against the Bengals in Cincinnati, the coldest football game ever played. They lost that game, or they would have gone to the Super Bowl. And we've had Dan on. I can say, hey, I like somebody, but I have to be honest about it. And it's not meant as a slight. It'll come off as a slight. Oh, Dan Patrick doesn't think Eli's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I would say it to Eli if he asked me the question, but I'm not going to have him on and say, Eli, you're not a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I'll go back to what happened when I'm sitting at a dinner with Mark Jackson and Patrick Ewing and John Barry. And Mark Jackson said, hey, Tell Patrick, who would you take, Akeem Olajuwon or Patrick Ewing? And I said to Patrick Ewing, I would take Akeem Olajuwon. I wouldn't have said that to him, but Mark knows that I loved Akeem Olajuwon and thought he was a better center than Patrick Ewing. But I don't go out of my way. I don't want a hot take on this other than let me assess this. Let me add some logic to this. Yes, Paul.
What this comes down to is the boost a quarterback gets from winning a Super Bowl. But look at two guys that Eli played with, O.C. Umenyiora and Justin Tuck. They each made 3 Pro Bowls, and they were very good players. Those guys were high-end defensive ends. They each won 2 Super Bowls. Tuck led the team in sacks, led the entire league in sacks in the postseason. Neither of those guys are going to the Hall of Fame. And they participated and really helped win 2 Super Bowls. And they don't get the boost that Eli Manning gets.
Yeah, but, if I look at who they're compared to, all the great defensive linemen, they don't come close to those guys. They were really good for the Giants team, but there are some great defensive linemen. You have quarterbacks who have won 2 Super Bowls, and then you throw in his last name, and he beat the Patriots, and he plays in New York. Put it all in the blender, he's probably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And as Todd likes to tell me, you can't spell elite without E-L-I.
That's very true. It needs to be said.
Thank you, Todd. Yes, thank you. Yes, Paul.
It is funny that after all that, and we all agreed that he is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, you finish with he will go in as one. That the other voters will do it. I wonder if that's like
I think so.
Pressure, I don't know, a public pressure of catering to the Mannings to a touch.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't, but if he goes in, great, fine. There have been other players who do go in, or when they go in, or players who don't get it. Rodney Harrison, to me, is a Hall of Famer, and he's been a semifinalist. There's a lot of players on here. I mean, you can go down the list and go Hall of Famer, Hall of Famer, Hall of Famer. First ballot is what I'm talking about. First ballot at that position is what I'm talking about. Yes, Marv?
You guys keep talking about the Manning name. Does the Manning name hold that much weight when it comes to the Hall of Fame? Because Archie's not in. Or is it just that Peyton holds that much weight?
Yes, Peyton does. Peyton is powerful. But I don't think Eli's getting in because of Peyton. I do think the Manning name, though, has, and he's, got the Manning cat. Like, he's there doing commercials. He's always there. You see him. He's a fun interview. And sometimes if you're nice to the media, that can play a role, consciously, subconsciously. Yes, Paul?
It's also the storyline. If you go back and look at Archie Manning, he was a second pick of the draft. You remember him, Dan. He was a big college star. If he took his hometown team, New Orleans, to a Super Bowl victory, all his stats would be washed away, and he probably would have gotten the Hall of Fame based off that alone. He made 2 Pro Bowls.
Well, he was a great athlete. Like, at that position, Archie could run and pass. Like, Archie, in today's game, would probably be a better quarterback than Eli because his ability to run. Archie was a great athlete. But, he played for a bad team. Played for New Orleans, got banged up. First jersey I ever bought was Archie Manning. Loved watching Archie. But it felt like every time I saw him, he had a cast on his arm or, he's limping out there. But, Peyton changed the game, revolutionized the game. You went to the line of scrimmage, and you're actually calling out plays, changing plays, kind of mocking the defense there. You know what they're going to run. That he changed the game. Eli, he did what he needed to do when he needed to do it. But if David Tyree doesn't catch that ball with his helmet, I don't think Eli is going into the Hall of Fame. I mean, it's that fine of a margin. Yes, Mark.
And also, I think it's Eli beating Tom Brady twice. I think that helps too. Because it's not even like you won those Super Bowls, look who you beat. Tom Brady probably has 9 Super Bowls if Eli doesn't come up big in those moments.
And it's not that he had great numbers as much as he had great moments. And the defense was wonderful. I thought that one of those Super Bowls, the front 4 should have been the MVP because they pounded Tom Brady. Michael Strahan's been on the show, and he said, we hit him with everything. He said, I had more respect for him in that moment, in that game, than anything else he did because we pounded him. And he never complained. He got back up. That defense, the front 4, they were the MVPs of that Super Bowl. Yes, Marv.
And I think an Eli moment in the Super Bowl that doesn't get talked about enough is maybe one of the best passes I've ever seen to Mario Manningham. That thing was perfect. And I think that
Yes.
pass probably doesn't get talked enough, but he's still not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Go ahead.
I am right on the sidelines there. So Manningham catches it. He's 4 yards in front of me. And you're thinking, I thought Eli was throwing the ball. I had no idea where he was throwing it. And all of a sudden, he places it perfectly with Mario Manningham. Perfect. You have that. You have the David Tyree catch. And then for some reason, the Patriots put a 5'10", 5'11" guy on Plexico Burress. And there's your Super Bowl.